Welcome back to GraveyardDance.com. We tend to have a lot of crime stories on our site and channel, but very rarely do we have one that is as brutal and as senseless as this one. Being a parent myself, it made me want to go home after watching this and hug my kids. Before we go on, I have to warn you, this isn't as mild as most of our work. If you're easily offended or if you're upset easily by graphic crime reporting, I'll totally understand if you pass this one over and go on to our next video. Also, if you're a younger person, I'll try to be as gentle with my wording as possible. But again, if you want to pass on this, I get it. It's not a pretty story at all. Also, if you want to binge watch all our content, it's all right there at GraveyardDance.com. Just please, if you will, head down to the bottom of the page and hit out social media bar and like and follow us so you catch all our future work. Also, we'd really love to know what cases you'd like to know more about. Drop a comment at the bottom of the video and tell us. With all that out of the way, here we go. On the morning of July 23, 2007, William Petit Sr. set off on a 20-minute drive from Plainville to Cheshire, Connecticut. He was going to check on his son, Bill, and his family after receiving a call from their home security company about an activated fire alarm. William and his wife, Barbara, were listed as emergency contacts on Bill's account, meaning they'd only be contacted if no one in the home responded. Right after that call, William had stopped by Bill's office nearby, where Bill's secretary mentioned that Bill's wife, Jennifer, had called earlier, saying Bill wouldn't be in that day as he wasn't feeling well. This only added to William's concerns. If Bill was home sick with Jennifer, why wasn't anyone answering their cell or home phones? Bill's daughters, Haley and Michaela, were on summer break, so they should have been around to answer as well. Back at home, William and Barbara decided to call a few local hospitals, recalling Bill's recent heart issues, wondering if the family might have gone to the ER. But after getting no answers and unable to reach anyone, William decided to drive over himself, even if it was just to reset the alarm. As he drove, his thoughts drifted to their family trip to Cape Cod just the previous week. He remembered Haley on the beach, Michaela engrossed in a book as usual, and everyone a little sunburned but happy together. He had no idea that trip would be their last family memory, or that this seemingly ordinary Monday morning would alter their lives forever. He saw their car wrecked at the end of the driveway. How could a fender bender lead to a house fire? The story of what happened to the Petit family has been told in different ways, but I can almost guarantee you haven't heard the whole story. In this video, we'll go all the way back to the very beginning to uncover what led to the Petit family's lives being tragically engulfed in flames. 50-year-old William Petit Jr., known as Bill, was born on September 24, 1956, to parents William Sr. and Barbara Petit. He was one of 5 children, and he and his siblings grew up working in their father's general store in Plainville, Connecticut. Bill spent his entire life in Plainville, graduating from Plainville High School before attending Dartmouth College. After earning his undergraduate degree, he went on to study at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. As a third-year medical student, Bill was working at Pittsburgh Children's Hospital when he met a young oncology nurse named Jennifer Hawk. Jennifer, 48, was born on September 26, 1958, in New Jersey to parents Richard and Mary Bell Hawk. Richard was a Methodist pastor, and Mary Bell was a nurse. Jennifer and her sister Cindy, just a year apart, were extremely close. Due to her father's role as a Methodist pastor, Jennifer's family moved frequently, as Methodist ministers often rotate to new churches every few years. This tradition, rooted in John Wesley's belief that traveling preachers were more impactful, meant the Hawk family relocated multiple times. Eventually, Jennifer and Cindy attended high school in Pennsylvania. Jennifer served as the co-medical director and school nurse at Cheshire Academy, a local private boarding school, where students saw her as a second mother. At the family's church, she taught Sunday school and enjoyed reading, playing the piano, and guitar in her free time. 11-year-old Michaela, affectionately called KK by her family, was the spitting image of her mother. Like Jennifer, she loved music and was a talented flute player. She shared her mom's love for reading and was known for being thoughtful, generous, and bright, a dedicated 6th grader at a private school called Chase Collegiate. Michaela had a passion for cooking and loved recreating recipes from Food Network shows for her family. She also adored her 17-year-old sister, Haley, and wanted to be just like her, excelling in sports like basketball, soccer, and lacrosse. In June 2007, Haley graduated from Miss Porter's School, a prestigious all-girls college prep school once attended by Jackie Kennedy. A straight-A student and an accomplished athlete, she was a varsity cross-country runner and captain of both the basketball and rowing teams. When her mother, Jennifer, was diagnosed with MS in 1998, Haley felt helpless, knowing there was no cure for the disease. Determined to help, she formed a team called Haley's Hope for the annual MS charity walk. Over her high school years, Haley raised more than $50,000 for MS research, driven by a desire to contribute to finding a cure for her mom's illness. This was an incredible family. The two daughters shared a close bond, with the younger one looking up to her older sister, who spent her high school years raising $50,000 for MS research in support of their mother's illness. She was also accepted early to Dartmouth. Their resilient mother was a church teacher and a dedicated nurse, while their father was a physician. They truly embodied the all-American dream, living together in a beautiful white colonial house. From the outside, everything seemed perfect, and unlike many stories, it truly was perfect on the inside as well. The Petit family was living the all-American dream. For 18 years, their home on Sorghum Mill Drive had been a haven filled with love, safety, and security. On Sunday, July 22, 2007, the family attended church, after which Bill went to play golf with his father. Michaela wanted to make dinner for the family, so Jennifer agreed to take her to the local grocery store, which was a few miles from home, to pick up everything they needed. As Jennifer and Michaela shopped, gathering items for Michaela's recipe, they were unknowingly being watched by 29-year-old Joshua Komisarjevsky, who had entered the store with intentions beyond shopping. Joshua, born on August 10, 1980, was adopted 2 weeks after birth by Benedict and Jude Komisarjevsky, a couple from Litchfield, Connecticut. After years of struggling to have a child, they were overjoyed to welcome an infant they could raise as their own. At the time of this incident, Joshua was engaged to a 20-year-old named Caroline, who looked more like a young teenager than an adult. As it turns out, his adoptive parents had no idea that when they adopted him that his family had allegedly all came from a family who were all batshit crazy, and most had a variety of mental afflictions. As he grew up, they would later find out just how crazy their new baby boy was. By the time he started dating Caroline, who wasn't much more than a youngster herself, Josh had become hooked on violent content that we can't speak of here. Let's put it this way, if he had been dating my own daughter, I'd have sent him on a slow boat across the Atlantic on a leaky vessel. He was just that kind of guy. He was soon arrested for a series of burglaries and was sentenced 3 years in prison with 6 years of special parole. Even the judge at that time knew what was up. He said that Joshua really didn't seem like an addict who needed money for a quick fix, but something more sinister and calculated, who he believed to be a predator of young girls. After being paroled, Komisarjevsky stayed at the Silliman halfway house, where he met Hayes. Before I go on, I feel the need to clarify something. This particular case absolutely infuriates me to no end. What these two were about to do to these poor people was unconscionable. These two goons are less than human in my own opinion. These girls had their entire lives ahead of them, and to have them ripped away at such a young age. And for what? Not to mention the lifelong grief that will haunt Bill and the rest of his family from then on. It sickens me to my very core. So when I say something soon about one of the so-called men who get arrested, I don't want people coming at me without knowing where I stand on the issue, which I know, it makes no sense right now, but it will in a few. This is going to be a pretty long video compared to most of our work, so I'll skip ahead to the day of the crimes. According to Stephen Hayes, after their arrest, they had originally spotted the young girls at the local market where they had stopped to use the ATM machine. I mentioned earlier that Komisarjevsky was a perv and had a thing for younger girls, right? They were simply shopping for groceries, so they could have a family dinner at home after church. They weren't hurting anyone or bothering anyone, but they caught the attention of these two bottom-dwelling slugs. They followed them home and was surprised to see they lived in such a huge, really nice home, and they said they felt there were probably a lot of valuables to steal. So they went and got the things they would use to commit the crimes and came back later that evening. In the early morning of July 23rd, William was discovered sleeping on a couch in the sunroom. Komisarjevsky accessed the basement through an unlocked door and retrieved a baseball bat that was resting against the basement stairs. The first thing they did was tie William's wrists and ankles with plastic zip ties and rope. William remembered one of them telling the other, "If he moves, put 2 bullets in him." Again, I warn you, it's about to get dark. They ordered the girls to their rooms where they bound and gagged each one, including their mom. They then tied their wrists to their beds and put pillowcases over their heads. The amount of terror they must have felt, I can't even imagine. After searching the whole house for money and valuables, they took William to the basement and restrained him with rope and zip ties. Hayes and Komisarjevsky continued to search the house for cash, but were dissatisfied with their findings. Eventually, they discovered a check register that indicated a total of $40,000. They made the decision to steal $15,000. Surveillance footage from a gas station captures Hayes buying $10 worth of gasoline in 2 containers that were taken from the Petit residence. After returning to the house, Hayes accompanied Jennifer Petit to the bank where he demanded that she go withdraw money from the bank. The prosecution later argued that this constituted evidence of premeditated murder. At the bank's opening, Hayes compelled Petit to withdraw $15,000 from her line of credit. Petit alerted the bank teller that 2 men were holding her family captive in their residence and were threatening to kill them. The transaction was recorded by the bank's surveillance cameras. While Petit remained with the teller, the bank manager contacted 911 to inform the police about the situation. The manager informed the dispatcher that Petit had mentioned the home invaders were being nice and that she thought they were only after money. In response to the bank's report, the Cheshire police evaluated the situation and established a vehicle perimeter while keeping their presence undisclosed. While the police were outside surrounding the house, these 2 pigs were inside and violating the girls and their mother all in the worst possible ways. Out of respect for the family, I won't show any of the interior crime scene photos or go into any kind of graphic details of what they suffered, but you can bet it's every bit as bad as you think it is plus a lot more. William had to suffer through hearing his wife and kids all being attacked, and there was nothing that he could do. By this time, they had already hit him over the head with a ball bat and pretty much left him for dead. He wasn't though. He yelled out to them to leave his family alone, and they laughed and said that it would all be over in a few minutes. They didn't just mean the attacks, they meant the family's lives as well. Komisarjevsky photographed the assault and attacks on his cell phone, so he could watch later. Classy guy, don't you think? Close your eyes for a moment and try to imagine the absolute horror they had to have felt knowing this. As I mentioned earlier, by this time they had drug William tied up, down to the basement, and had hit him several times over the top of the head, causing massive injuries and bleeding. Their intention was to kill him, but he wasn't dead. They didn't realize this though. They returned to the girls and continued the sickening attacks. The younger Komisarjevsky went upstairs to attack the youngest daughters, and the much older Hayes attacked Jennifer, the mother, downstairs on the living room floor. When I say attack, I don't just mean hitting or things of that nature, but we have younger people who watch our channel sometimes, so I have to be careful how I word things. Apparently, Komisarjevsky went to check on William to make sure he was still tied up and was shocked to learn that he was not only alive, but had broken free from his restraints and had managed to crawl next door. William was injured so badly and was covered in so much blood that the neighbors didn't even recognize him. When they realized what was going on, they called help. When Komisarjevsky realized that William had escaped, he ran back up to the first floor and told his accomplice, Hayes, that William had escaped. That's when Hayes decided to kill Jennifer, and he strangled her on the living room floor after viciously attacking her for the longest time. They then went upstairs and went to Haley's room and did the same to her, and then to the youngest daughter, Michaela, and finished her off as well, or so they thought. As it turned out, the 2 wasn't just vicious and cruel, but apparently stupid as well. Neither of the girls were dead, even though they thought they were. They poured gas throughout the house and set it on fire and tried to make a run for it. Little did they know the police had been outside for at least a few hours or so, but was told to stand down and not enter by a higher-ranking officer. To think that they could have been saved all the trauma and that their lives could have been spared breaks my heart for this poor family. They deserved so much better than this. Komisarjevsky and Hayes ran out after starting the fire and jumped into the Petit family car and tried to make a run for it, but ran into a police car. I told you they wasn't very bright. They took off but was caught after running only a block, but it was too late. There was no way to get to Haley and Michaela in time. This is where it gets really sad. I've pretty much became desensitized to most true crime cases. It's not that I don't care, it's just that I have seen so much that it takes something really bad to shock me, and this one really did. When the girls' autopsies were done, some heartbreaking news came out of it. Haley, the oldest daughter, had gotten free from her restraints and was on her way out the door of her room, most likely on her way to try to save her sister, but she never made it that far. She died of smoke inhalation just outside her door. Think about that. She survived the attack. She survived literally being strangled, and even managed to escape her hands being tied, and was literally free to run, and to die only from the smoke and just feet from saving her little sister. 13-year-old Michaela, this happy, bright little girl who had probably never even had a boyfriend yet, who had her whole life ahead of her, was viciously attacked and still tied to her bed where they had strangled her afterwards. Who could do that to an innocent child? The thing is, though, she was still alive. She, just like her sister, survived and most likely was probably awake, tied to the bed, knowing the fire was coming at her. She died from a combination of smoke inhalation as well as burns. All this from two men who should have never ever been able to even have been released from prison in the first place. After their previous crimes, I don't know. I just do not believe in being released ever, under any circumstances when certain crimes are concerned, and crimes against children are one of them. They should have kept them locked away until it was time to carry them out in a pine box, in my opinion. But they wasn't, so this was the end result of that. Remember when I said I was going to say something that may make a few of you angry? I'm about to say it. Both Joshua Komisarjevsky as well as Stephen Hayes was both convicted. Hayes's trial was first. I'll spare all the boring courtroom back and forth, but the long and short of it was he was sentenced to death. Good deal, you may think, but not so fast. It was later overturned, and he got life in prison. Turns out, Stephen didn't want to be locked away in a men's prison because he knew that crimes against kids don't go down so well behind bars. He begged for the death penalty, but he still got life. This is where I may offend a few of you, but hear me out, okay? Stephen, who had been Stephen his whole life and was still Stephen when he did all this to this family, all of a sudden decided he was transgender and wanted to be referred to as Linda. He didn't want to be referred to as a man, but as a woman. Here's the thing. I don't have anything against anyone else's beliefs. You can say you're a chicken and peck from a bag of corn for all I care. If you say you're a chicken, then you're a chicken. You do you, boo. I refuse to call Stephen Linda or even acknowledge the fact that he claims to be transgender. So for the remainder of the story, I will not call him Linda, and I will not refer to him as her. Not doing it, I refuse. I think the only reason he tried it was so that he'd get sent to a female prison where 1, he wouldn't get his ass handed to him daily on a plate, and 2, he could possibly do what he did to get himself into prison in the first place again. Either way, it didn't work. Thankfully, the state, even though they had managed to overturn the sentences passed down to them, at least he'd stay in a men's prison where he belonged. Komisarjevsky's trial was up next. It began on September 19, 2011, and was a continuation of Hayes' trial. Hayes blamed him, and he blamed Hayes. Typical cowards. Komisarjevsky was found guilty on October 13, 2011, and on December 9, 2011. The jury recommended the death penalty. It was a short-lived victory for the prosecution, because in August of 2015, the state overturned the death sentences for life sentences. To me, it just doesn't feel right. I mean, they get to finish their lives, but the women of the Petit family didn't. Where's the fairness there? In the years since the terrible tragedy, the home was eventually torn down, and now there is a public park that serves as a memorial for the Petit family. William eventually managed to put his life back together, and on August 5, 2012, Petit married Christine Palouf, and eventually had a baby boy. We here at Graveyard Dance wish him nothing but the best for him and his family. I can't even begin to even remotely know the pain and suffering this poor guy has been through. It really is unimaginable. No human being should ever have to endure what him and his family has had to endure. As far as the two who committed these atrocities, they are still alive, but hopefully not well in the Connecticut prison system. I don't know if they get laptops or iPads in prison, but if they somehow happen to see this story, boys, I hope the rest of your days absolutely sucks. I could go on and on forever, but I don't want to make the video too long. I do hope you all like our work. If you have a subject that you're interested in seeing on the channel, we've covered just about everything ranging from UFOs and alien abductions to true crime and dark history, and all kinds of unsolved mysteries. Just drop your story ideas in the comments section below. Also, we're inching closer and closer to that 1,000 subscriber mark where we can finally become monetized. So please help a girl out and hit that like button on our videos, and most of all, please by all means hit that subscribe button. It literally takes a click of your thumb, less than a single second of your time, and it helps us so much more than you realize. Till next time, thanks again so much for watching our stories. We truly appreciate you.